We're working on a 2014 Ford Escape SE. This has the 1.6 liter turbo, the EcoBoost. No crank, no start. So let's dig in, see what we can find. Just to verify the concern, nothing. And that fluttering on the dash, that's just my phone's refresh rate. So first thing I'm looking for is any immobilizer information, anything saying that, hey, we have the wrong key or do not recognize the key that we're inputting. But I don't see anything like that. So let's go under the hood, find the starter relay, and go from there. So under the hood on the driver's side, this is the fuse box. I want to pull that off. Get it one-handed. All right, let me get it with two hands so I don't look like a dork. Okay, we got it off. R10, they don't label anything, but it's all numbered. So R10 is right there, which translates to R10 is right here. So that's our starter relay. Go ahead and pull that. Now, one thing you can do, I'm working by myself, but if you have a partner, you can put your finger over that relay, have them try to crank it, see if it'll click. If it clicks, then you know that you have power going to it, and then the ignition and all that is at least feeding the relay. But I do not have a partner, so we're gonna do that same stuff just with a different setup. So we'll pull that off. This is the battery cover. We'll want that pulled off for my test light. So we'll just go ahead and pull that. There's a couple of things, and then it should slide forward. And there we go. So we have battery access. That's the positive. Negative's kind of tucked in the back, but they have a little stud here if you need a ground. So on the side of the relay, it has our own little wiring diagram schematic for it. It looks like 3 and 5 are the switch, and then 1 and 2 is the solenoid inside here. So what ends up happening is 1 and 2, so power and ground or power and ground, either way, that energizes when you turn the ignition switch, and when that energizes, 3 and 5 become connected together. So 3 and 5 is the main switch. So what we want to do is 1 and 2, we can jump those, and then when we turn the ignition switch, the light bulb should light up. That will tell us that the ignition switch and the wiring all to the relay is good. So that'll eliminate that side of the circuit. Okay, so I have my test light hooked up to pins 1 and 2. That's the control side circuit for the starting, so that is run by the ignition switch. So I turn the ignition switch on. If this test light lights up, that means that the starter relay has the ability to energize. All right, you saw it light up. That means the circuit from the ignition switch to this relay is all good. All the wires and everything are perfect. Before we proceed, we want to make sure that we're getting a power on pin 3. That's our main power feed going to the starter. Remember, pin 3 and here is pin 5 close that circuit, so that relay really closes pin 3 and pin 5, creating the path to the starter. So we do have juice on 3. So now what we're going to do is jumper. I have a 30 amp fuse, and we're going to jump pin 3 and pin 5. Initially what we're doing is becoming the relay. The whole point of that relay is, when you turn the ignition switch on, is to make pin 3 and pin 5 contact with each other. So we're going to be the relay, fused for safety. So we got nothing. So because it didn't do anything, now we have two possibilities. It's either the starter motor itself. If power is getting from here all the way to the starter and it's not starting, then it could be the starter solenoid not doing anything. Now I don't even hear a click, so that would make me think it's the starter solenoid. If you could crank it and hear that click, 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 then that would make me think it was the solenoid was okay, but the starter itself was bad. So the starter relay, or a broken wire from here to the starter. So the next move is to gain access to the starter. Now from up here, the starter is, let me point to it, I don't know if you can see it, right there. That's the top of the starter solenoid, but there's no access to any of the terminals from up here. So we have to go under the vehicle, remove the skid plate to gain access. Now, before I go under there, I wanted to explain something real quick. So let's say it did start. What would that tell us? Well, it'd tell us that it was a relay, because we have power and ground coming from the ignition switch to the relay. And then if the relay turned on, it would crank the motor. So if that's what happened, then we'd be looking at a bad relay. Another thing you could do is just pull a relay. Probably one of these, I think one of these is for the blower motor or something like that. You could pull out and swap. That would be a quick, easy test to see if it was a relay. But we weren't expecting it to start. So it did what we expected it to do, not start. But if it did, then we'd be looking at a relay. All right, just want to clarify that. Okay, so we are now under the vehicle. We want to take this skid plate off. On this vehicle, there's some 10 millimeters up front, and then the rest are Torx. So, that opened up. Nothing. Let me get a good look. So look what I found. This is the block ground. I don't know if I can get it to focus. Hold on, let me see if I can get it. There, okay, can you see it? I can move that ground. It's not even tight. Maybe that's all it is. The loose ground. Wouldn't that be awesome? Okay, so let me see if I can get a wrench on that, tighten it up, and try to crank it again. Okay, trying to gain access to this starter is pretty ridiculous, but if you look up at the top, right there, you see that metal little thing? I don't know if you can see it. If it'll focus. There we go. See that metal? So that's the S terminal, access to the S terminal. So that's right there will energize. Let's put my test light on it. Sorry. Okay. So that will energize when we jump these. So if that energizes, that means that the S terminal, or the signal from the relay to the starter, is good. So again, we're gonna just put this in like that, and it should light up, and it does. So let me undo it. It goes out. So the starter motor is getting the signal to the starter solenoid from the ignition. So now we need to make sure that the starter is getting its main power. It has a good ground. I already checked that on the casing, and that's it. So if we get the main power from the battery, then that condemns the starter. Again, this will be hard to see what I'm touching, but on the side, on the inside here, there's a little terminal. So that is the main battery power. It's going to the starter. And then I have it disconnected up here, so we know for sure that that is main battery power. So it's getting power. It has a good ground to the starter. Let me switch things over so you can just see, touch the case. Has a good ground. That ground that was loose underneath, that was not posing our problem, even though it was a loose ground. It wasn't our issue. So this needs a starter motor. So this is the starter out of the vehicle. When we were testing it, we put our test light on this. This was hidden with the plastic shield, and that was giving us our main power feed. Then I said, hey, look, there's that little metal piece that you could put your test light in. And I thought that was the S terminal, but it's not. It's actually the other side of the starter solenoid. The S terminal is down here on the bottom, and you can see this one actually is broke, but still functional because we were getting power from this terminal, which means that the S terminal was working and it was turning on the starter relay, not relay, but the starter solenoid to get power to this. So really, if we have power here, that's power directly to the motor, and then the motor body is the ground. So it's a little deceiving, but we did get power on this, which means the solenoid was good. If the solenoid was bad, we would not have gotten power on this, but we still could have gotten power on this. This was just so buried, we didn't see it. So I'm not sure how you can get a test light on this part of it in order to test. Maybe you guys know, maybe you work on these and you know the trick. I couldn't figure it out. Even from underneath, there was no opening, no room to get anything on that S terminal. So we still diagnosed the starter, but it could be misleading if you don't get power on this and you think, oh, well, I'm not getting power from the relay to the starter. Well, you still might be, because that's not even the one you're supposed to be testing on. This is the one you're supposed to be testing on. But the solenoid was good, so we were able to diagnose it still. But anyway, I'm rambling. If the solenoid was not good, it could be misleading. All right, just wanted to point that out. All right, got everything all back together. Got our battery cable hooked back up, so let's go fire it up. And there we go. All right, that is a confirmed fix. Well, there you go. That is the diagnosis of this no crank, no start. It just needed a starter motor. We put one in, you saw it crank over, good to go. Now, as far as the testing, it's a shame that this starter motor doesn't have better access to those terminals. We were able to get the main power feed on the starter, but the S terminal was still elusive. That top one that I tested as I showed you wasn't necessarily the right one to test. Now, did it give us good information to make a call? Yes, it did. But it had the potential to be misleading. If I did not get a signal there, I may have thought, oh, I'm not getting power to the S terminal. But that would have been not the case, because I actually was not testing the S terminal like I had thought I was. Anyway, hopefully you learned something. Maybe this was helpful to somebody. Usually with the no crank, no start, if I'm not getting anything on the dash, I go straight for the starter relay. Relays fail, often, and so do starter motors fail. Those are the most common. So I go right to the relay, and then I can check the starter. Some starters are easy. Some, like this, are a little more challenging. But all right, well, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe. See you on the next one.